So Abraham.
Yes.
Great name.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Solid. I mean, so tell me a little bit about yourself. I don't really know you. I know very little about you.
Yes.
Well, I'm very interested.
First of all, I'm honored to be here. And it's a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, it's another day on planet Earth.
That's right.
An honor in itself.
Absolutely.
And then you get the other aspects like meeting someone new.
There you go.
It's great.
Today's a treat. I'm blessed already.
Yeah.
A little bit about myself. You know, the immigrant story. I grew up in Mexico. Parents right across the border in Tijuana, Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents are educators. They're both professors out there in Mexico. And so wild about the American dream. My dad moved over to the States because working at a grocery store in the States makes more money than teaching at a university in Mexico. So he says, you know what? I'll put down my pride. I'll put down my agenda, but I want to put my family first. Came over, gave us an opportunity. Been here for a couple decades now. And now I'm here, married for 10 years, have 2 beautiful daughters. And
how old are your daughters?
5 and 7 years old.
Oh, that's like kindergarten and second grade.
Yes. It's the funnest time.
Yeah.
We're having discussions. We're arguing. I enjoy it.
Yeah. How good are they at arguing?
You know what? They're better than they think.
Yeah.
Just like their mother.
Yeah.
You know, they believe in what they say. And they're at that age where they feel like they know what's right and what's wrong. And they're trying to tell me. And as their father, I don't think it's my job to always have to bring them to reality. I just go with the flow if it's harmless. So I'm enjoying this season.
Yeah, I think the kids, I have a view on that. And I think this notion that you shouldn't be a friend with your kids, I don't think is correct. I think the more you can be a safe harbor,
yes,
the more you have a chance as you grow older,
right,
over decades,
yep,
and they begin to have their normal human problems, not a 5 and 7 year old problem, but
sure,
a 35 and a 37-year-old problem.
Yep,
they need a safe harbor.
Yes,
and the way that safe harbor gets structured, I think, is by the way you behave at this time in their life.
That is good to hear, because for me, I speak with my wife. I think of that season of life, and I'm like, I want them to be able to trust me with whatever it is that they're going through. And that trust is built over time, not overnight. And like you said, it starts today. It starts today.
Yeah, they need to know that you're safe, emotionally safe.
Yes.
You can have a disagreement, but emotionally you have to be safe.
So I'm learning about that.
Well, when you're going to be whatever, say 50, 60, and they're whatever they are, 30, 35, and they have a problem, a big problem, financial problem, relationship problem, who knows what kind of problem, health problem.
Yep.
If they went to someone else, that would be, your heart would be really pinched. That's why the time you spend now, I think, developing the relationship around the trust, emotional trust.
Yes.
Then they come to you. And believe me, when you're 60, this sounds like professorial, but when you're 60, life changes. It doesn't have the same dynamism as it had. And you're almost going to be waiting for them to come to you, because it'll be enriching for you.
Yes. And I believe in the idea of you reap what you sow. So I hope that in that era, like you said, I won't have the same energy. I won't have the same drive or stamina, and maybe even the time to do it. My prayer, my belief is that I sow enough seeds now that in the future, I believe there'll be a harvest.
Yeah, there'll be a nice tree of life going on there.
I sure hope so.
But you want to water the root.
You have to. And it's difficult, but yeah.
So tell me more, though. You have 2 lovely daughters. Your family went through some changes to sacrifice to make it more comfortable, easier for you. Mm-hmm. What about your education then? What did you do with education when you were in the States?
You know what? It seems almost like the typical story because my parents were so into education. I kind of rebelled against it.
Of course.
I went into music, loved music. And growing up without finances, though, we did not have the means to buy instruments.
Yeah.
So I found that in the local church, they just had instruments for free.
Yeah.
So music was for me almost like a gateway into a community of faith.
Yeah.
That for me was in the church. And now years later, my wife and I, we launched a community of faith right here in San Diego, and we've been doing that.
So when a community of faith is structured in a certain religion, in other words, it's a Christian
Yes.
religion, what do you call yourself as the leader of this group? Are you a minister, a pastor?
Yes, we pastors.
Yeah. And what's the difference between a minister and a pastor?
Well, I think it's more of a cultural difference. I think that's what people want to call whatever their leaders, and I think it means something to them. For us, I was raised in a space where culturally the leader or the leaders, we do it as a community, as a group. It's not just myself. We're called pastors, and that's just the title that I think culturally it gives people like a framework to understand. Got it. That's the manager or the owner of the shop.
Got
so
it.
they understand, hey, who's the pastor? That
When
guy.
I was in the Lutheran church, it was Pastor Schleifer was his name. It just came to me, Pastor Schleifer. So, but he was ordained in some
Yes.
Lutheran process. Is that the same thing when you build a community of faith? Do you get ordained by some aspect of the Christian religion?
Yes. So you're ordained through the process. And when it comes to our own, and it's so funny, right? Because in Christianity is one of the few religions that has so much freedom and expression. You look into Catholicism or other ones, there's a very streamlined or very clear way of how you progress in that calling, as we call it. But in the Christian faith, it's more cultural. It's more about where you are. So for us, it was the process. I grew up working at this church from the age of 18, and it was a process of personal discipleship. So it was almost like a personal calling where I built a relationship with the pastors, and they had their own program within the church to say, hey, for the next 4 years, let's just do life together. Let's teach you how we serve people in our context, how we look at scripture in our context to be ordained in this place.
Why would you make a distinction? I'm wondering. And that's great.
Yeah.
I understand exactly what you're talking about. It's just a little bit more organic.
Yes.
If, since we can use that word in the
Absolutely.
21st century almost all day long.
Yes.
Organic as opposed to rigid and structured. So so would you say that there's the difference between those two approaches? This is interesting to me. Number one, when you distinguish, say, Catholicism or Presbyterianism or whatever it is, and you distinguish Christianity, are you making a difference between only the way that Christian approach is structured, or are you actually saying that you function in a more Christian-like than, say, a Catholic who would say they're a Christian, but they're a Catholic Christian?
Right.
Or you could say a Presbyterian, but a Presbyterian Christian, or a Methodist Christian.
Yes.
So are you saying and I'm asking the question,
Yes.
are you saying your Christianity, because of its organic nature, is more Christian in the sense, or has more access to the Christian function, which would mean that you'd be functioning more like your leader.
Right. Yes.
As opposed to when it's controlled by, I'd say, systematic hierarchical approach. You go to here, you get, you're in the Catholic Church, you could be a local priest, you could be a cardinal, or anything that's in between. I don't know. It's like I'm going to be facetious and sound a little snarky, but it's almost like military.
Sure.
Captain, lieutenant colonel. I'm a general.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what all that would mean there, but what you're describing seems a lot more organic and has a little bit more flow to it. Is that accurate, or do you?
I think it's absolutely accurate. And I think it's because of the way we approach it. Like you said, there's a hierarchy and an order. I look at the Catholic Church and a lot of the organized religion to have a top-down organization where there is a vision and a clear vision, and we're going to start and we're just going to go down and it just begins to disseminate from there. I look at it from a bottom up where the need determines the function, not the function, the need. We are not a solution looking for a problem. We are looking at a community and saying, this whole thing of faith is not a one size fits all, it's a one size fits one. So if there is already a church, like a Catholic church or a Baptist church or Presbyterian or whatever, that's already established, and yet there is millions of people that have not yet found the community of faith, it's probably not because the faith, based on my personal conviction, right? I'm a faith guy. It's not that faith is not desirable. It's maybe people have not yet found a connection that fits them. If you go to a restaurant and you get food poisoning, you don't give up on restaurants. You just find a restaurant that serves a meal that serves your function.
You're not going back to that restaurant.
You're not going back to that restaurant.
That's fine. I understand. But you're going to continue to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. So
look for food. Yeah.
So for me, growing up in the church, being disappointed by people in the church, I realized I'm not going to give up on the whole thing. But if I've been disappointed, if I've been hurt, how many others like myself can connect? So let's create a space for people that are like that.
Let me ask you something about this.
Yes.
So let me ask this as maybe a different way, the way you described it as being hurt, et cetera, and moving on. Mm-hmm. But let me ask you what was preserved. Mm. What did you see? What did you sense about staying even within the context of, say, Christian faith?
Yes.
Even when whatever church you were going to, in your words, was injurious in some way.
Yes.
What direct experience were you having? Not doctrinal.
Yeah.
Not scriptural. What experience were you having with regard to your word faith that kept you at least looking for something within the context of Christianity that would bring the fulfillment that you sense it could bring?
Yes.
Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as opposed to saying you were hurt, which is one thing, which I understand.
Yes.
But there was some thread in the tapestry that was lively for some reason.
Yes.
That allowed you to continue to pursue whatever understanding or whatever relationship that you thought you could have in that whole tapestry.
Yes.
Does this make
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now we're going down to more selfish motives. Because we could say,
good, let's go there.
Yeah, because you could say, why do you do this? Oh, the Bible, the Quran, whatever it is that you believe in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you the most selfish. I believe that I am the best version of me when I'm surrounded by people.
Got it.
It was the community.
Yeah.
I feel seen. I feel known. I think humans in general were designed to be in community. We're designed to be around it. We're in downtown. I was walking by and I just saw right outside the building, I saw a little piece of art on the wall, and it just looks like vandalism. It's a little piece of paper and it had some writings on it, but it doesn't fit there. But you put that same piece of paper in a gallery surrounded by other pieces of paper that have the same sort of graffiti. Now it's art. I am a broken man. I am a flawed human. But what I found is that when I got around people that were sober enough to admit their brokenness, I was no longer just a flawed man. I realized I'm a miracle in the making. I'm a masterpiece in the process. And I realized, wow, if God did this for them, I'm sure he can do something for me.
Why do you use the word God?
That is what I would describe to be the author of my faith. And again, it's a very personal belief.
But would that same God be the author of every faith?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe that everybody may have different language for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the word God is describing some source
Yes.
of the entire creation.
Yes.
And everything in it.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Good.
Yes.
Yeah. So I see what you mean, that you knew community was important to you.
Yes.
But the delivery system in one community that you were in did not enliven you, put it that way.
Yes.
And didn't uncover anything.
Yeah.
And it didn't connect anything.
Yeah.
And so you stayed in the tapestry, the thread was there, you just began to sew it differently.
Yes.
That's what I see.
That's the exact, that you're exactly right. It didn't,
Yeah.
maybe it was a PR problem. It didn't fulfill on its promise.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, I use this phrase, hierarchy and territory. When when I say if I were going to make a distinction between someone who wants to be competitive with an outcome, and so they're going to establish themselves in some hierarchy, much like if an office building is somewhere, it's got an architectural design, it's got an entrance, it's got elevators, it's got floors, it's got office doors. And once someone is in that environment, they're in an environment that's got within it almost an essence of either going up or down, meaning getting more from or less from, or kind of competitive atmosphere. It's hard to have a real warm community in a modern office building.
Sure.
As opposed to if someone's in territory, now they're out in an more open space.
Yes.
And in the open space, then you can find in the contemporary world, the tribe, so to speak. It's much easier because it's not dictated so much by the standard hierarchical approach.
Right.
And I think most religions today, when I look at them, they're incredibly hierarchical. And if you can be lost, and you also can be, I would say, aggravated. It can also produce condescension and judgment and condemnation. And that is would be against the natural law of a divine nature.
Yes.
So you get
100%.
more human nature in the hierarchy and less divine nature.
Because I believe that is the source of the problem. I feel like when people say I'm hurt by religion, I think you were hurt by a person. Within it, because like you said, the human nature comes out. The same circumstance as you would in any other organization, nonprofit or for profit. The company didn't hurt you. This particular manager hurt you, and let's really look at it holistically, but also specifically.
What would be your definition of religion?
Religion would be a set of defined beliefs and activities and behaviors. I don't think religion has anything to do with a higher power. I believe that being a comic book aficionado could be a religion. I think people are religiously committed to sports. You find a community, you find beliefs, and you find behaviors. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I grew up with Star Wars. Now they became being a Jedi is a religion. It's a man-made construct.
So Star Wars, is that the one with Darth Vader?
Oh, yes.
I'm kind of dating myself. Meaning, I know what it is. But so here's the definition of religion according to a Greek and Latin interpretation or reference. When the word first came around, it's bind back to the source, which I think is a beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and even for that. Much like you use the comic book aficionado or the sci-fi freak. I'm using really interesting words now, freak. But in either case, or athletic, neurotic, compulsive athletic person, which would be me in some cases. But I think if in any of those situations they feel bound to the actual source of creation, then they're in a divine place.
Yes.
The thing with religion, it's got organizational structure, and that can be a problem. In my view, and I've had some interesting direct experiences in my lifetime that I very rarely share because sometimes it diminishes the value of them to share them very openly, although at this time of my life I will, because I'm older, I think, and it's not about being wiser, but it's got some value now. It didn't have value when I was a little bit younger and kind of eager, something or other. But binding back to the source can be a direct experience. And so when I look at the Jesus story or the Muhammad story, or I look at the Gautama Buddha story, I look at the Krishna Arjuna story, all of those are stories. and they all have religions that have been built around them. But the actual story is the story of how you go from human to divine as the dominant nature in the way you experience life. So back to the comic book aficionado.
Yes.
If the joy that he gets from that experience, it connects him to the source somehow.
Yes.
Then he's functioning in some divine nature. However, if it's just compulsion
Right.
and obsession,
Right.
then he's totally just human.
Yeah.
But so I think the word religion, the word God have taken on, especially in the 21st century and before, it's been growing. They've lost most of their impact. And I think that's a good thing, not a bad thing. I think it, much like you, and I don't want to sound like I'm pontificating,
Sure.
but when I listen to your story about moving from in my view, my language, from a hierarchy approach to this more community approach, it's very similar to what's happening with those words like God and religion.
Yes.
People are tending not to like to have those words as strong labels in terms of how they're experiencing life.
Right.
I think that actually opens up doors more than closes them.
I agree.
And
Absolutely.
so I think it's you have an interesting story. So your parents were very dedicated, and that's part of your culture. This the stuff that's going on now with the Hispanic culture makes me crazy because I cannot find anything other than this wonderful culture that produces very loving people, very family oriented, hardworking, very dedicated, very honest. I mean, because we obviously here in San Diego, we have a border city, but we have access to the Hispanic culture really directly.
Yes.
Whereas if you move in different parts of the country, they only get their information about the Hispanic culture from somebody who's going to be incredibly grandiose and incredibly wrong in their grandiosity.
Yes. And and they're speaking. We are putting opinions on a pedestal, and we're following
everything's
these personalities.
entertainment.
It is.
That's
it is.
the problem.
That's how you make money.
Yeah,
you got to get eyes.
Clicks. Listen, I'm on it. Freak today. I did Freak. I did Darth Vader. Clicks. I'm not as far behind as everyone thinks. I'm like right there. I could probably talk to your 5 and 7 year old.
Come on.
But I'd say, what's that acronym? Tell me, what does that one mean? So I'm going all the way back to your kids now.
Yes.
What does your wife do?
She stays at home.
This is great.
Yes.
I think it sounds like 50s, but
Yes.
if that's her best service world, that's a great world.
Yes. It's a pick and choose. I mean, could we benefit from a little bit more of an income? Sure. Is it more beneficial for her to be with our daughters and then putting into them those values of femininity and our personal values? We saw more value in that, and we have to pick the value of not what we want now, but what we want most. Could we use more money for a new car? Sure. But what do we want most? Values in our children. We made the decision, and she loves it, and I see the benefits of it.
Where do they go to school? Public school or to
They're homeschooled now. Our kids started school during the shutdown of the pandemic.
Oh, right.
So they had no choice but to go online, and we love the system so much. We kind of stayed in it.
Yeah. But does the system itself, do you provide certain time within the educational system for the Christian aspect of life in your family, or do you keep that for Sunday, so to speak?
Sure. We have our personal practices that we do daily, like prayer. We put into them scripture. That's just something that's part of our life. Yeah. It's kind of like interwoven in the everyday.
So how do the kids handle that?
It's a great question.
But let me clarify. How do they handle homeschooling as opposed to, I want to go to the school with all my friends? And also then within the homeschooling, there could be doctrinal, scriptural time where they would learn and understand or be talked to in a different way than they might have been talked to at a public school.
Yes. Well, I love that question because it goes back to us as parents. We don't live, at least in our household, based on assumptions. we trust that even though they're young, they are able to communicate their feelings and desires. So we're a big question. We question everything at home, and we will just ask. I don't assume, hey, do you enjoy this? Do you love this? Because me as a dad, I want to know that I'm doing a good job. Something that I believe in is a good father. It's not a title I can give myself. It's something that my kids can only give me. So I always want to know how I'm doing. So I ask them, how do you liking school? How are you liking church? Do you miss friends? Would you like to go in person? And I trust their responses. They don't dictate what we do, but they're definitely considered in the decision. So we asked them, and for now, they're enjoying it. They're loving it.
Are they, the 7-year-old and the 5-year-old, different?
Very different.
In what ways?
I think their expressions are so different. It's so funny, right? Like they become who you are. One of them is just like me in so many areas. One of them is just like the mom. So I'm going to be paying for my sins. I already know everything I did to all my teachers, my parents. I'm going to pay for it through my youngest daughter. They're so different.
Yeah.
They're so different.
You're not paying, you're getting an opportunity to see a difference.
There you go.
There's no payment.
That's right.
I got to just let you know that.
I received that. That's wisdom. I love that.
Yeah. You just have an opportunity to see it differently.
Yes. And I'm learning and to see the impact of how very naturally they learn. They're like sponges. It kind of makes me want to be more careful, more thoughtful.
So who does the teaching?
My wife does the teaching,
right.
For most of the day. There's homework packets, and she's very involved with that. Yes.
Yeah. So does it look like a normal day at school? Would you say, I don't know what the ingredients of homeschooling is.
Yes.
But in other words, hey, 8:00 we have history class.
Right.
Both of you be there with your books.
You know what? No, it's very different. My daughters are on Zoom for an hour and a half a day, and that's it. Versus 5-6 hours. So they're on Zoom with a classroom of other children plus their teacher in a community group. And then for the next couple of hours of the day, they just have packets online, workbooks online, programs online.
But is this structured by an educational system?
Yes.
Okay, so you buy into this?
Yes.
Okay, so
we're part of a
buy into
program.
homeschool. Right? Does it have a Christian undertone to it,
No.
or is it just education?
Just education.
So how do you then? Does that also evaluate how your kids are doing? Meaning, at some point at the end of the year, much like I used to get a report card, there's some red notations on there. Or usually, what was it for you? I used to get a red U.
A red U. What's a U for?
Yeah, a U. And they made it red. Everything else is in blue. Red U means unsatisfactory.
Wow.
And it was always in discipline. I was never. I always got a U. But I was a smart ass. I was total smart ass.
Yes.
Class clown. I mean,
Call that leadership.
Yeah, of course. That's what happens. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year or every quarter, do they get an evaluation that says they're within whatever the norms are for their grade age?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that's great.
They we decided, okay, the world changed during the pandemic. We had no idea what was going to happen. Here in California, things were shut down. It was pretty intense for a little bit. And that just so happened to be the season where we jumped in. But it's just like school, the testing, the report cards. Just today, before this recording, we had a parent-teacher through Zoom. So it gives us the freedom for us to have more ownership of our time. My daughter will just wake up and she's in school,
Yeah.
And then we're able to travel. We're able to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
And it's great.
So let me ask this about the kids in school. So they're in school. They get grades?
Yes.
Yeah, they get graded. So do you have a sense that they have, this is very interesting for me to know this. And I worked a lot with kids when my hair was like that, actually. I was a speech therapist, believe it or not.
Wow.
Speech pathology and audiology. So I worked with, in my day, it was called handicapped kids in general. Today it's challenged, or however it's described. But do you get a sense that they can have a sense of, say, what I call, in my language, a threat of punishment and a promise of reward in their way they're dealing with their schoolwork. In other words, success or failure would be another way to look at it.
Right.
Do they have that energy where they get tense or they get edgy about the success of the test they just took or the failure they're in? Do they have that energy?
That's great. That language is great. That tension, maybe because of the grades that they're in, because they're so young, it's not as intense. But even just hearing you say it, that's definitely a value of mine. So even if it wasn't going to be added in the school, that's definitely the type of energy that we create in the home. It's something, and maybe it skips a generation. My parents being educators. And then it didn't skip me, but now I want my kids to have what I didn't have. I want them to do well. I want them to really take what they do very seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's nice, but I'd let up on that. I'll say it in a nice way. That sounds good. But I'm going to tell you. Yeah. I'm going to go back to the safe harbor gig. Man.
Yes.
Try to put yourself as a 55 or 60-year-old and your kids have a problem. And you hear about the problem from someone else because they haven't come to you. And they don't come to you. I can't talk to you, Dad. You don't listen to me.
That would break my heart.
Yeah,
just the
there
thought
you
of
go.
it.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now.
You're right.
Take this threat of punishment, promise, reward, energy. It's not the words.
Yes.
It's just the energy. Take it out.
It's an energy.
Yep. Take it away. It doesn't mean you don't want them to do well, but what they're seeing is contingency.
True.
Does that make sense?
Conditions.
Yes. And that's not freedom.
That's so good.
And if you love them, which you do, and you're trying to build their hearts, which you are,
Yes.
and your heart wants to get bigger, which it does, then I would just, for whatever reason, suggest that you take the contingency out in the way you speak, in the way your eyes are, and the way your energy is.
You're so right.
Yeah, because this is how the love grows.
Yes.
And that's going to be the solution.
And you're speaking also even to my inner child in the sense of
course.
I believe in being the human you needed for everybody in their season. I want to be the father that I always wanted as well.
Yeah.
Deep inside, we all want to be that.
Yeah, I mean, if you take, let's go to the Christian thing. If you take the father, now I'm going to tell you from direct experience, the father that you guys are referencing,
Yes.
total, just pure life. It's pure, and make it as simple as plain as can be. That nature.
Yes.
I mean, you guys have it as a person, et cetera. It's okay. It's not, in my view, from my direct experience, but its nature, the nature of the Father is complete, unconditional love and perfect understanding. There's no such thing as condemnation, judgment. There's no such thing as guilt, envy, and none of that stuff exists in that nature.
Yes.
And so if you want to, not trying to tell you to make a mood of that, but if you access that nature every now and then, that's the one that you would resurrect to be present while you do the non-contingent world.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they don't strive for outcome.
Right.
It means that the Father isn't looking at them as though it's contingent.
Come on.
Yes.
Hey, that would be a great message on a Sunday.
Yes, it would be. Because, And
because I believe unconditional love does inspire a personal conviction.
Well, it's the freedom of pure love. It's pure.
Yes.
That's all that is.
So
it's
a response. It's a response because of that generosity and that love. It's a natural response to be a decent human and loving being.
That's what we're structured to be. We just haven't evolved.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what I just described as threat of punishment, promise, reward, and I took you back to the caveman and said, fight or flight. Yeah. It's the same exact thing.
Yes, it is.
Yes. What we do, and even in the corporate world, I've got to get that advancement or we're going to suffer.
Yeah.
I've got to kiss up someone's ass and I got to kick down to get it.
Yes.
I mean, look at how crazy we are.
Yes.
And so we have this built-in fight or flight to survive caveman, which we did well, but the actual threat of punishment, promise, reward is, live or die.
Yes.
But we still have that energy
yes.
in the contemporary world. And we're talking about two young girls, I'm talking about your girls. I don't know their names. You don't need to know their names, but 5 and 7, I can see them plain as day. And they're absolutely stunning and gorgeous. And the whole nature of their way is actually has a quality of innocence to it.
Yes.
That innocence gets most corrupted. I mean, think of the caveman. You think he's very innocent at the time he's looking at the tiger 20 feet away, trying to decide, do I run or do I fight? There's my cave.
Yes.
It's 25 feet away, making these assessments in nanoseconds while the cortisol goes and the blood rushes to the heart in case he fights and the tiger bites off his arm, he doesn't bleed to death. Mother Nature has given that man an enormous opportunity to continue.
Yes.
One way or the other. And he's in threat of punishment, promise, or reward. Here we are in the 21st century with threat of punishment, promise, or reward over school or grades or advancements in the work situation. I mean, it's nuts.
It is.
For me. So I'm just saying to you, when I see your kids, I mean, you got to love them.
Absolutely.
That's it.
It's so unfortunate, like you said, it goes against what the human nature is.
Divine nature is.
Divine
the
nature
human
is.
nature does that. Divine nature doesn't do that.
And there's this tension, and there's this fine line. There's this narrow path because we want to nurture their divine nature, but we want them to be able to succeed and thrive.
But not with
in the system.
contingency. That's
not with
the deal.
contingency.
If you do contingent, that's human.
That's
They're
so
gone.
It
You left the divine nature in yourself.
It just seems like humans are the only creatures that don't know inherently.
It's because we have free will.
That's it.
The problem is not with there. I gave a talk on my last retreat in November, at the end of the retreat. Not a talk. I was asked a question. I don't remember the question, but I know how I finished the answer. And I said, we have free will. That's what distinguishes us from other animals. They've got really strong instinctual systems that only work within boundaries.
Right.
Human beings are unbounded in potential. There is no boundary to the potential. So we have free will, but you're not really free until the will goes away.
Yes.
Then you're free.
Wow.
Now, if you take the word contingency in this little threat of punishment, promise, or reward thing I'm talking about, you take contingency out, you took will out. Now you have freedom in there. It doesn't mean you don't want the outcome.
Right.
But when you get a strong will or get real contingent, you are no longer present in the moment. You're looking for the outcome.
That's good.
And then you're stuck with a systematic approach to continually looking for outcome. You're not present at the moment while you're doing.
Yes.
Which is where the joy can be and where the most divine potential is.
Wow.
Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I love your kids. I love kids. I love them. And I think it's, Abe, I'll tell you, can I call you Abe?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Abraham's really beautiful. Michael's a beautiful name, too.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it is.
It is
I got a nice meaning. I never appreciated it. And Michael, get in here. That one I didn't like. Get your ass in here. What the hell were you doing at school today? I didn't like Michael then, but I like it now. But I forget where I was going to go. But I think with the kids, what I see is this: I have students, parents, and they have kids, and their kids are talking to them. They're 10. The kids are 10. They're 11, and they're absolutely stressed out about a test that they're taking.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking about where they're going to go to college. They're 10.
Right.
They've been on the planet for 120 months. Your daughter's been on the planet for 60 months.
Yes.
And the other one she's 7, that's 140 months.
Wow.
Or whatever it is.
Yes.
Yeah, 7, 12, 14, 84 months.
Right.
60 months and 84 months.
The pride of the human to assume that we will even have the time that's going to happen.
Boom.
We're concerned about something that's not granted. Tomorrow is not promised.
You're ordained with the divine, but it's incumbent that you uncover it. And that's what gives you the moment of joy, moment to moment. Happiness is not an outcome. It's something that connects moment to moment.
That's it.
It's
Happiness
a ness.
is not an outcome.
It's a ness.
Yes.
Happiness.
Yes.
Religion is a noun. It's not a verb.
Right.
You
right.
can't practice religion.
Yes.
I mean, I'm getting off.
But I love it. I love it because I fully agree.
But what it comes from is your kids for me.
Yes.
From me personally. I can feel kids and the potential to be free.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean they don't produce. It doesn't mean they don't uncover their potential.
Right.
But it means they do it in a way that they're free.
Yes.
Free from what? Free from fear. Free from anger. Free from resentment. Free from being contingent.
Yes.
They're free in the moment. And kids grow like that.
Yes.
They have an innocence.
Yes.
Once they start to learn things and objects, and then they learn premises and perspectives, and then that innocence starts to get.
And it's almost like we are teaching them how to become anxious beings by giving them this fake notion that they have some sort of control over their future.
Or they have to control. They have to be in control over
Which
their
is
future. That's
ridiculous.
Totally. It's not true.
Absolutely
if
not.
you haven't experienced the divine, or if you want, I don't use God anymore, although I can, and I can get very poetic about my own personal experience, direct experiences.
Get poetic, Michael.
No,
there.
it's fine. But I think what I'm saying is that's the informer.
Yes.
My direct experience. I'm not informed by reading a book.
Right.
I'm informed by my direct experience. I can get support for my direct experience by reading.
Yes.
You know, when this sounds a little sexist, but that's the Bible in many cases. When the man comes to the father's door with the innocence of a child, the father opens the door.
Yes.
When the man comes to the father's door with the innocence of a child, the father opens the door.
Yes.
Well, I'm saying to you about this threat of punishment, promise, reward, contingency, it takes away the innocence. So the door of the joy of the divine can't open. Does this make sense?
Absolutely.
That's the gig. You know, so I think, and when I hear, and I was a Lutheran. I grew up an acolyte in the church. I used to light the candles.
That's great.
And then I look out and see what chick from high school is there.
Great place to find a spouse.
I wasn't looking for a spouse. I was looking to get laid. You know?
Come on, Michael.
Yeah, right underneath in the whatever the part of the church. It was a big church.
Yeah.
And I had this long rod.
Yeah.
I call it the Baroque rod of the divine in my book. And I used to light the candles on the altar at the beginning. And I'd sit in this red adorned tunic. And, I'd sit in the sides of the church, and there would be another acolyte across from me, and then the minister, and then the congregation would be out there. So when you talk about religious systems, I know what they are.
Yes.
But I think for me, the nature of the innocence is the key. It doesn't mean they don't learn. They're not naive. It's the nature of innocence.
Yes.
In which everything is delightful.
Yes.
In that state.
Yes.
And even though they want an outcome and they're going to get grades, you just don't want them contingent.
Yes.
And that energy, you're right, comes from you.
Yes.
And I don't know what you're like with them. I know you love them. That's obvious.
Yes.
But if you want to purify the love, but take out the contingency.
I love that because you literally just said it.
Yeah.
I want to fight for their purity.
Yeah.
I think to the pure, all things are pure. And that what you seek, you find.
Yeah.
And if you are looking to be cynical about anything, there's always something to be cynical about.
Yeah.
But I think if you're looking to be hopeful about something as well, but that depends on the condition of your heart. And you're right. It's what they learn now that will determine who they will be in the future.
Yeah, we have to stay with the magic that this whole thing is really beyond the comprehension.
Absolutely.
And intellectual comprehension.
Yes.
Biblical. Out of context, the peace that passeth all understanding.
Peace without proof.
Well, there's no intellect.
Yes.
You don't need intellect. You need a direct experience.
Yes.
Is what they're talking about.
Yes.
But I think, I think it's great that you are who you are. Yeah, because I can see as much as you know your texts or what you want to do, you're open.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Once When the man comes to the father's door with the innocence of a child, the father opens the door.
And that's where we want to stay. I want my children's life to be a product of doors that are open beyond their personal abilities. I want to believe that it was something else. I want them to have, and maybe going back to the thread. My parents said, I want to give them an opportunity that it's beyond what we can. We always want the next generation to have something better and greater, more opportunities.
Well, you want them to enjoy education from the point of view of education in the moment.
Yeah.
Without structuring whether it's a good thing or not a good thing based on only on outcome.
That's it.
There's your tension.
Yeah.
And tension and compression in quantum. There's probably quantum field law, quantum theory. Tension and compression is described by it most easily and most fundamental way by a dog on a rope that you're playing with.
Yes.
That's tension and compression. It's sort of like the outcome model that I'm referencing.
Yes.
Once you get there, I think it's really problematic because then it becomes like a style.
Right.
And so I don't know what your style exactly is with your kids. Like, damn, you better change it if it's that one. I'm just teasing you.
But I receive it. But I love, because you're so right.
I'm thread of Punisher, Promise, Reward with you. But I think, you want to just enjoy the joy of them. They're going to be smart. Mm-hmm. I already know that. And your wife and their mom it's great that she's, she's shepherding them.
Totally.
In a way. It's great.
Yes.
This thing is wonderful.
Yes.
So it's cool. Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Abraham, what does Abraham mean?
Father of the faith.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. So, and that was your birth name?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think my parents kind of marked, their life was marked in the season where they were pregnant with me.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a risky thing. And they prayed a very real prayer. And they said, hey, God, if this kid is healthy and we can make it through, we want to dedicate him to you. And just so happened.
You're right.
We're still here. We're still here, Michael.
You're still Abraham.
We're still here. And you know what? It's funny that you mentioned about the names and enjoying the names. I didn't like my name growing up. I was like, it's not a very marketable name. It's not a lot of cool Abrahams. But I learned this. I don't get to pick what my name is. I get to pick what my name means.
Yeah.
And I want my name to mean something that more in alignment with what you're saying today. Giving people space to be truly free in themselves.
Yeah. Too much will is not good.
It's not.
No, that's not the nature of the divine. The divine doesn't have will in it.
Yeah.
It's got divine in it. It's got this beautiful, unbounded ocean of love. That's its nature, fundamental nature. But I think when you I think of Michael, the reason I didn't like it is because normally when my name was called out, it's because it was not something good going down. Like the time I got caught stealing cars and I became invisible. I mean, this is a great story. It's a long story. I'm going to shorten it. I got caught stealing cars. But how I got caught was the guy I was stealing cars with was in the car that was stolen. I was out of it. When the police pulled up, I disappeared. I was so cool at this kind of survival thing, man. I just went radio silent. Honest to God, I think I became translucent.
Wow.
I just stood still as I could ever have been. And I was across the street in a big street in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at this time. And the cops both went to the stolen car. Steve got out and ran. They chased. So I just stood still for about 3 or 4 minutes. They disappeared over a hill. There's no one around. And then I slid into an alley and I walked home with intersecting alleys, which was about a 3-mile walk.
Wow.
Got into my house. The first thing there, the steps up to the attic where I lived. I went up the steps. This is maybe 7:30 on a summer night. I'm maybe 15. And I just crawled into my bed.
Yes.
And I just laid there. And the next morning, the phone rings. And I hear my dad go, "What? What? What? then it comes, Michael, get down here, Michael. And I'm going, I don't want that name. It's not me. That's not me. That's not my name.
I love that.
Yeah, so that happened, every couple of weeks. So something like that. So for me, I never liked the name, and I was called Mike a lot as an athlete. Luckily for me, I was a great athlete. I was just a natural athlete for a long time. And so, but Michael was not.
It's like a reminder.
Yeah, but it's great now. I love my name now.
It's a great name.
Yeah, it is.
It's a great name.
But I think, you're a joy. You have this, and this community kind of way that you approach the Christian world, where it's warmer, it's a little bit more tender, it's a little bit more accessible. It can be exchanged without it being maybe too much doctrinal. I mean, that's the view I have. I don't know if that's accurate.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes the nature of the divine grow.
Yeah.
Not the words don't do it.
Right.
The words can be a support, but the
Right.
nature is the key.
Yes.
And I teach meditation, and I tell my students, okay, if you don't want to meditate, here's another choice. Throw yourself on the kitchen floor every morning and scream out, I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea what's going on. And when you're so sincere with that, beyond sincere, something's going to open up.
Ooh.
So there, do that one.
I tonight.
Now Dad's gone off, man. I don't know where he's gone. That's,
You might get an email from my wife. What did you do to this man?
Yeah, so this is great. So what else do you do on a daily basis outside of operating as one of the community leaders for your faith?
Yes. This whole idea of being in the church was so funny is because at 18, I started working at a church, a more conventional, what is now called a mega church, thousands of people. And I started working as a janitor.
I knew it. I was gonna say you were the janitor, and this is great.
I kept my
Please don't
jacket.
tell me this isn't a white Anglo-Saxon church, and the little Hispanic comes in and cleans up.
And they're like, that's the guy. And yeah, from there, what's so funny is that was my job to clean, and I would vacuum during office hours. And there was this cute accountant, and I would spend a little extra time in her office.
Yeah.
And, years later, she ended up being my wife.
Yeah.
And
so were you the cute Abraham at that time too?
You know what? I was trying. I was learning English. It was a new language for me.
Yeah.
And
this is great.
And I just everybody told me, like, don't go for her. She was beyond my means.
Beyond your reach.
Financially, all of it, socially. But the heart wants what it wants. And eventually I tricked
it's
her.
the heart and other parts. I understand the whole thing. That's a great part of being human. But let me ask, what is the mega church in San Diego? Okay, got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you make a comparison with what you do now, and your wife too, because she was in the mega church, even though she functioned administratively, she's part of the energy of that community. So would you each even say to each other, like you lay down in bed together and go, God, honey, I'm so glad we got out of that mess. And we're in this wonderful space now with the same. Does that ever come up like that?
You know what? We don't, we try to speak life.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
We try to speak life, but I will say this. We realize now, maybe we stayed a little bit too long. It wasn't for us, but we didn't have the nerve to venture out. It was safe for us. It was what we knew. It was what was known.
It was the architectural.
And it was, though we were surrounded by thousands of people, we still felt like we had no real connections. Versus a small community now in numbers, but the intimacy, the connections. I feel seen, I feel known, I feel valued, I feel needed. And now everybody that comes into our community, I feel like I know them.
How do people come into your community? And I understand exactly what you mean by the difference. The intimacy is a great word.
Yes. So this is a church now. Our church now is about 200 people.
So, but how did it start? When did it start?
It started during the pandemic on a Zoom. 7 people.
Yeah.
7 people. We left the big church and we went on a church tour in San Diego. And we said, well, we're not going to compromise anymore. We're not going to settle. We want to find a place where we feel at home. And we looked around a lot of great churches, but we realized it's not for us.
Well, let me clarify. The church, when you say great churches, were they more the hierarchical type churches, or were they community churches? Like
Hierarchical, because we almost kind of wanted to replace
what you're familiar with
without us even knowing it.
Yeah, I understand.
We kept going to churches that were similar.
What's the indoctrination?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was saying about hierarchy versus territory.
Yes. So it was. We went through a period of a little bit of a deconstruction, right?
Yeah.
It's like, why do we do what we do?
Yeah.
And do we need it?
And what do you want to get from it?
And then we realized we didn't need all of it. Some things are beautiful. It's a whole life approach, like eat the meat, spit the bones, right?
Yeah.
There's things that are great, but there's some things that are just extra weight that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, if there's nothing like what we're looking for, why not build it?
Well, I call that the org. It's like a monster. The org, the organization. I have a chapter in my book called The Org, which as I go into the org, it sounds like some monster underneath the door, you know?
Yes.
Like, what's the first horror film? It was called, where that slime comes under the door and gets on people back in the late 50s. I forget what it's called. Anyway, but the org is what you didn't like. You just went to smaller org until you got out into what I call territory.
Yeah.
Because you had 7 people on a...
Yeah.
That's territory because you're thrown out.
That was it.
And that's perfect because now you build what you want.
Right.
Based on the way you're experiencing each other.
That's it. And then 7 people around our little dinner table.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was satisfying.
So did you take the lead in that?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So that you already had something going in your body and your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did your wife at that time go right with you when you were taking the lead?
I think she was open about her being a little bit more hesitant. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more poetic.
Yeah.
And she's more reasonable.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're a little bit more philosophical. But let me ask you, does that still exist today? Or is that gone now? That little space that was there between your intuitive energy and where you wanted to go versus her holding it back, does it still exist today?
I think her hesitation wasn't so much about us doing it. I think it was more to protect us.
Yeah.
It's like, why are we jumping back into what we just got out of?
Yeah.
It wasn't anti what we're doing. It was more about, I want to protect our marriage first. I want to protect our children.
Yeah.
So now the same feelings come.
Yeah.
But it's what keeps our family safe. Because sometimes you can be not necessarily too trusting, but like, yes, my guard's down.
Yeah.
I welcome people in.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not the wisest decision. So I trust my wife's judgment a lot.
So she has a good judgment.
Absolutely. She's the best. I trust her.
Yeah, that's great. So now you have 200.
Yeah.
Do you have a space now after COVID?
We're here downtown San Diego.
Yeah.
Yes, we came into a warehouse and we're building there every Sunday now. And it's a beautiful space.
So is that your daily life?
It's my daily life now.
Yeah, I got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
After leaving a church, I was working there for 14 years. That was my salary. But I walked away from it. Lost all my money. It just wrecked everything financially. But I still felt like I had a call. So I took 2 jobs. So I was working 2 jobs for the last 2 years. I worked at a nonprofit during the day, after school programs and before school programs. And every night I would unload trucks at Target.
That's great.
Because I said I don't need it to pay me or whatever. I'm doing this out of love.
Yeah.
And that was 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now do you still do that kind of stuff on the daily, or you're totally supported by the church?
Totally supported by the church. Yeah. 2 years
great.
in.
Such a pleasure to get to know you.
It's an honor
I
to be
may
here.
walk into your church one day.
You have to be my
I'd
guest.
probably be like the rebel.
No, you got to come up.
Yeah.
We need to have this conversation. People need to get to know you. I love your heart. I love your insight. This blessed me more. Sometimes are invited into a conversation, but I'm leaving with so much more. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, I'm leaving with what I came in with, which was the joy and the love. It's just got a different bounce to it.
There you go.
You're bouncing it.
Yes.
Omar, right? Yeah, he's bouncing it too. He said nothing, but he's there. I can feel him, going along with this. This is great. This has been a joy to meet you.
Thank you, Michael.
And I love your family.
Thank you, Michael.
And someday if I meet them, that'd be fun.
Yes.
But if not, for you, take the contingency away from those kids.
I will. I will.
They're going to be successful. They're going to get good grades.
Yes.
They just don't want to grow up fearful about the outcome.
I received that.
You want the outcome, but not fearful.
Yes.
They move away from divine then.
Mm-hmm. I want to keep them there.
Yeah, of course you do. Pleasure.
Honor.
It was wonderful to meet you.
Pleasure to meet
Look
you.
forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Come on.
And have a wonderful day. There you go.
Come on, Michael.